Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, the citizens of YouTube. This is Pastor Dowell, and I'm here with another straightway truth. Now, you know me, if you've been listening to me for any length of time, is that I do my best to stress truth, reality, and what's real, as well as the spiritual truth in almost every single thing that I do. And as we continue to get farther and farther and farther in time, it's becoming increasingly difficult and very, very hard to communicate, to try to translate, to try to do whatever we can to penetrate the veneer of the minds, to allow it to the truth to sink in. Well, I'm going to try to use a few things here this morning, as well as I'm going to attach a few videos here this morning to try to let you see what the supporting truth is. Never before in the history of man has a society been dumbed down to an unprecedented level like we have here in the United States of America. Never before has it ever been recorded in the history of man to where we are quickly losing what we call morals and values, to where we can't even discern what is right and what is wrong. We don't even know right from wrong today, because everything is based on our own personal reality. Regardless that, here's the greatest history book in the world. The greatest history book in the world today. Regardless of what it says, it has a wealth of history in it. And did you know that that book talks about these silver coins right here and gold coins? Did you know that? But what I'm going to do again here, I'm going to try my best, wake up, to shock you to truth again. Because, you see, fraud in this country, on this soil, is not uncommon. And I am trying to get you people to see, as best as I can communicate and translate it, that you cannot trust in this system at all. This system has used us all as slaves in order to accomplish what they want. Now, what's amazing is that every country in the world is telling their citizens to store tangible assets, gold and silver. But here in America, they make it sound like and make it look like that you're some type of stupid, dumb idiot for doing that. Because I want you to listen what they've done. Sometimes after 1964, after this assassination of John F. Kennedy, we went from real money to slugs, iron slugs. I'm holding in my hand right here a 1935 quarter, which is 90% silver. And I'm looking at this quarter, then I pick up this quarter, and this is a 2001 quarter. One of these quarters have value to them, lays to them today, and one of them doesn't. And what we have been sold is a lie, and we have taken a lie. We have used a lie, because you see, this quarter right here today, you can go anywhere in the world and get anywhere between $5.50 and $7 for this one quarter. For this thing right here, you can go here in America and you can get a quarter worth of whatever you call goods and services in the store. Now, it depends on how much you think that is. You can almost buy 2 gallons of gas with this quarter right now today. This quarter, you cannot buy 2 gallons of gas. You know the reason why? Because that's letting you know that real money always carries its value, and false money is just exactly what it is. It is false to the core. Now, while I'm talking about this for a second, we have had a fraud perpetuated upon us as a people, because we don't even know any longer. We do not even have a clue what is real and what is tangible. Our entire economy is based upon the fraudulent claim that real tangible assets or real wealth actually does not exist. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? In other words, this is a 1-ounce silver dollar, and it has a $1 value on the back of it. This silver coin does. This is a $1 bill. Are you following me? Both of them have the denomination value of $1, except this bill right here today will buy you about 70 cents worth of goods and services. 70 cents. Today, you can get $40 worth of goods and services with this 1-ounce silver coin. Now, the rest of the world understands this, but the people in the United States of America don't understand it because we are mind numb. We don't believe in self-education. We don't believe in self-autonomy. We believe whatever they say, the talking heads on TV, and then we use it. And we actually think that we understand something and know something. We have gotten to the point now that we don't even know what's right and what's wrong. Here, for instance, here's the Holy Bible, the King James Version. Real? False. False. The devil's Bible. And of course, most of us, depending on which one you ascribe to, you will defend. Now, right here, fake, phony silver, 1-ounce silver China coin. Real 1-ounce silver Chinese panda. I ain't finished yet. Listen to this, because I'm trying to do something before I let you see these videos, because maybe these videos, and maybe with me dialoguing like this, will help open up your understanding. So I'm taking my time. I'm not talking fast. I'm not just running off like I usually do. I'm taking my time. This is a 1996 penny, fake, phony slug. It's supposed to be copper, but it's not. It's a slug. It's just metal. 1979, pre-1982. Wow. Copper, a copper penny. One is real, one is false. 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 Are you beginning to get the picture here for a second? Just for a minute. And then we have all had a Ponzi scheme perpetuated against our unsusceptible minds. Unsusceptible minds. They have told us that, ooh, there are people out there, bad people, that are going to steal your wealth. So the best thing for you to do is keep your money in the bank. Which in this country, they have laws on the book that if you have any form of wealth in a safety deposit box at any time they want, they can confiscate anything in those boxes. The reason why you've been trusted in banks, because they don't tell you that. They do not disclose the terms of the conditions that both parties agree to. So anytime you sit down with government in any shape, fashion, or form, your mind operates one way because they trained you in their public school systems. And so they know how to dupe and deceive you. And you're thinking one thing, just like the courts. The courts don't represent the people of the United States of America, nor a justice system. It is an injustice system. That's why the woman wears blindfolds, because this is about corporations. You know, in this country, they have got people convinced and believe that a corporation is an actual person or entity. Can you believe that? Now, so since they got you duped and deceived, you go run and you put all your money in a bank, which they clearly tell you if you would research it. But most of us won't do that. We will usually just follow the lead of the masses. And since we follow the lead of the masses, we're going to end up suffering from the same condition of the masses. So what we usually do is we'll just go run and put our money in the bank and not even think nothing about it. And then when they do close down the bank, and it's not a matter if, it's a matter of when. And it's going to happen. There are going to be a lot of upset people, but it makes no difference how upset you get. You're still not going to get your money. So they said, your money will be protected if you put it in the bank. That's what they told you. Your money will be protected if you put it in the bank. What happened to protecting your money yourself and at your own home, or put it on someplace on your own land? What happened to you protecting, you being your own security? Well, you've got this religion called Christianity, that they twist, warp, and distort, even till today, that in that religion, you're not supposed to have any enemies. None whatsoever at all. Yet in the New Testament, as well as the Old Testament, the children of Israel, Jacob's children, have got enemies from one end to the next, including the Most High himself. As a matter of fact, he clearly defines in the book of Revelations that all the nations are his enemies. Every single one of them. And the only enemy that he doesn't have is those who are Israelites. That means you can't be a Christian. I'm sorry, but it's just the truth. So anyway, we got some bad stuff going on here today. The government has the power to take whatever they want to take, and they would do it by force. And what's sad about it is that the people that work for the government is the one who support these unrighteous laws, and they're going to end up dying in this civil war. But those who make the laws, they're way far away in some sealed house, who knows where, across the seas. So anyway, I'm here this morning because, 2 years ago, there was a big stirring uproar all across this world. Do you know what it was? The United States of America had gold-plated tungsten metal bars, which carries pretty much the same density as, but and weight, but it's a harder substance than gold is. And they sold them out on the world market. And a lot of these people on the world market got a lot of this gold from what you call Fort Knox. And the world is peed off. But by the time CNBC gets it, they poo-poo it and throw it off over the side like it wasn't nothing. But the world is highly upset. Highly upset. You didn't know it because there was a media blackout here in this country. And I'm asking you, if the people who are running this country, who control the economics, the money of this country, if they'll do that to the whole world, what have they done to you? I'll tell you what they've done to you. They have trained you and manipulated you to believe that this is money and this is not money. Even though on the market, this carries a 70-cent value today, and this carries almost a $40 value. I think it's in between 35, 37, somewhere along in there. Nevertheless, you can get, let's go bare minimum today, 38 of these for one of these. And yet you still think that this is money. You know why? Because you've been dumbed down and can't nobody tell you nothing. So the whole world is telling their people to stack up this because the United States of America is going down. The dollar is losing its sway. It's not going to be the world's reserve currency. As a matter of fact, we all better start getting ready to speak Mandarin because the land of China over there, they're the ones who doing the lending. And we are doing the borrowing. And according to this book right here, the borrower is a servant to the lender. And what has our country done? They have trained and manipulated everybody to become subservient. Religion has done it. Your country has done it through the school system, which you should train your children yourself. We have just believed lies and accepted lies. And even as simple as terms as I put this video, even after I get finished attaching these other videos showing you real facts, if you don't get it, you deserve what you get. So you get me telling you, you better store some food, you better store some water. Everybody else, no. Look at the voices of the masses. Ask yourself a question. Has the voices of the masses ever been right? Ask yourself a question. Has all these big-time mega-church preachers, have they ever been right? I mean, I'm like a long voice out here. I got old brother John Reed way up in Washington. He calls me Jeremiah. I'm like just a voice crying in the wilderness, trying to get the people ready for what's getting ready to take place. You trust in a system that has raped you mentally, psychologically, and physically. And they're going to get everything they can out of you because they view you all as slaves. That's what you are. Just flat out slaves. And they treat you as such. And now, even till today, we don't know what's right and what's wrong. Well, anyway, this book teaches me what real money is. And so I'm going to stick with that book. I'm not going to stick with no Bitcoins. I'm not going to trust in any kind of paper manipulation or paper money whatsoever at all. All these fraudulent claims. I'm not going to do it. This has got to be the most deceitful country that there has ever been in the history of mankind. The one thing I do know, that we are in the greatest debt of all the countries put together in the history of mankind. That I know. And you know what they're doing? Same thing they're doing with Greece. Putting austerity measures, putting the bill on the people. Get out there and go to work and pay this bill. But then what do they do with themselves? They give each other a pass and big bonuses. That's why I'm trying to get you to become self-sufficient. But in order to do that, you got to learn how to think. You better believe that you're going to have your people out there that are deceived, that everything that I say, no matter how truthful I say it, the whole world believes that this is real money. This is a 1 ounce silver eagle. 1 ounce. They're losing faith in this, but yet you in America, you believe this. The world believes this. And the world are teaching their people that China is supposed to be a communist country. China, a communist country, yet they're telling their people to store silver and gold, and your country is telling you to go out and get in more debt, invest in more dollars, buy more dollars. You can't even get nobody in the world is even buying dollars no more. Nobody. So now you know what your country do? They go rape and rob your federal pension fund. They next your 401ks, then your IRAs, anywhere that they can grasp money that they can get hold of, because if it's not in your hands, like this one is, this is in my hands, and it is protected by this. If it ain't in your hands, it's not yours. Woo! I'll tell you what, don't know what else to say, but maybe what these two guys have to say in this interview, and then maybe it's amazing how this guy was brutally honest on a syndicated news source in the next video, but yet and still, total media blackout again here in the United States of America. Oh, by the way, that nuclear tower over in Nebraska, it's underwater. They may not mean much to you, but if you remember Fukushima over there in Japan, how that they cooling towers underwater, now they got radiation at unprecedented levels, death rates of people, birth, children, the whole 9 yards, off the chain. But you think your country going to tell you that? You think they're going to inform you? No, they ain't going to inform you of that. They ain't going to tell you nothing. No, they ain't. You better start preparing yourself and wake up out of sleep. Listen to this interview.
And now, set your eyes on the future, and let's consider what really happened.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about Ron Paul's call for an audit of U.S. gold reserves. And the reason this is important is because back in October of 2009, there was a scandal where gold bars that were working through the various gold brokerages of Europe and various international banks bearing the stamp marks from Fort Knox were found to be fakes. They were actually made out of tungsten, which is very, very close to gold in terms of its density and mass, although obviously much harder. And these tungsten bars were then covered in a very thin layer of gold and made to look exactly like the real gold bars in Fort Knox. And this story kind of came and went. It was definitely all over the media in the rest of the world. It was hardly mentioned in the United States. I think CNBC covered it briefly to sort of poo-poo and ridicule the whole thing. Now, what may be going on is, back in the 1960s, the Federal Reserve, right after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, our silver coinage was removed from circulation and replaced with these clad slugs we're using today that are pretty much worthless. It took control of the value of the money out of the hands of the people, and it put it in the hands of the Federal Reserve. And the theory was that as long as people believed that these coins were still worth 5 cents, 10 cents, 25 cents, what have you, that, that everything would go on working. And actually for a while it did. But the bottom line is these little tokens of value were not really worth their face value anymore. They were symbolic only. Well, what may have happened as our economy got into some serious problems, or somebody decided they just wanted to have the gold, is they decided we can do the same thing down at Fort Knox. We can make up clad gold bars and make them look just like the real ones. And as long as people continue to believe, everything will be just fine. Because after all, you know, you don't actually take apart your coins in your change, and you know, you don't actually take apart a gold bullion bar that is going around for investment purposes. Actually, however, somebody in Europe was doing a check assay on the bars, which involves basically drilling into the bar and taking a very, very tiny sample of the gold and making sure that it really is 24-karat gold, because fraud is not uncommon in the world's bullion markets. They don't want you to know that, but it isn't. And the assayer in Europe drilled into one of these Fort Knox bars and hit tungsten, broke his drill bit. And it was a big, huge scandal, and a couple of other people, there were even some videos on YouTube where some of these gold experts in Europe were showing these bars cut in half with the tungsten inside. And so here's the reality. You know, if the gold bars that are in Fort Knox are fakes, you know, if a quarter of them are fake or half of them are fake, or even worse, almost all of them are fake, there are two questions there. I mean, first of all, where did all that money go? Where did all that gold go? Is the entire U.S. economy based on a fraudulent claim to the possession of real, tangible wealth that simply doesn't exist? I mean, there have been a lot of scandals of gold trading, because when you go out and you invest in gold and you don't actually want to have physical possession of the metal in your home because of thieves and burglary, which is running rampant now as police departments have to cut back their officers because of the budgets, you get a paper certificate. But that paper certificate for your gold is really no more legit than the Federal Reserve note, and there have been several scandals where gold brokerages are selling more of the certificates than they actually have gold on hand for, basically running a reserve system of banking on the theory that people aren't going to all come in at the same time and trade their certificates in for the actual physical gold. Frankly, if I were you, I would do that immediately. If you are holding a gold certificate of deposit, go in, get the gold yourself. Hide it under your mattress, hide it in your backyard, get a safety deposit box, although in a declared economic emergency, the government has already said it's legal for them to go in and take any valuables from safety deposit boxes as well. So I don't know about that. But the bottom line is, Ron Paul is correct to ask for an audit of the U.S. gold reserves, because that gold, the wealth of that gold, is what the entire U.S. economy, in theory, rests on. And we need to know if somebody has, I mean, you know, right out of James Bond, somebody has ripped off Fort Knox. And it's probably somebody inside the government in a position to actually do so. Probably, in fact, I'm going to go out here and speculate a little bit, and I'm going to say this is, in fact, speculation. But gold bullion is routinely being transferred from Fort Knox to the various Federal Reserve centers, especially the one in New York. Well, there's an ideal opportunity for somebody to be doing some swapping. And we got to find out. Now, I did put up the article about the fake gold bars at whatreallyhappened.com. I'm going to put up some more of those same articles. But all you need to do is do fake gold bars, Fort Knox, into any search engine. I recommend Bing or Start Page, and you will find this was big news all over the rest of the world. You weren't told. You're being told about Lindsay Lohan is getting into and out of rehab again. Doesn't that make you feel like you're fully informed here? So good for Ron Paul. I don't think it's going to happen, because if the people are behind the fraud with the gold bars that I think are there, they're never going to allow it. Remember when Ron Paul just wanted an audit of the Federal Reserve to find out who was getting all the bailout money? And that was basically voted out of existence. So,
you know, the sad part about all this is, it's that our heart has become so hardened against those who speak the truth, those who tell us the truth, because we have been manipulated. We've had our minds and our conscience manipulated to destroy every fabric of truth, especially those who have the spirit of truth, who is telling us the truth about any form of our life that actually needs to be transformed, or what I call really truly needs to be changed. Because, you know, change is very painful. And it's the reality of this all. It's better, because it's the attitude that many of us has taken. It is better for me to stay dumb, docile, demoralized, stupid, ignorant, and apathetic, rather than to become informed and to do something about my pathetic little life. Because, you know, in order for me to have to do something about my pathetic little life, that means I have to change. And to change means that I am admitting that I've been wrong and I need to repent. And today, saving face has become a high commodity in this very evil and prideful society. So no amount of evidence or no amount of truth, I do realize this, is going to convince many of us of our wicked condition. But it's not for you. You have to understand, you know, you have to have the spirit of truth in order to hear what I'm saying. If you have been raised by this system, you trust in this system, you will defend it tooth and nail to your very dying breath, regardless of how much you're being taken advantage of. You know, I make a statement often around here straightway. I say, a slave that love his chains have no need whatsoever at all to be free. And most of us, hey, we have gotten so used to being in chains that we can't even fathom freedom because now we are comfortable. Because what I'm telling you and the direction that I'm giving, and if you're listening to me, you're going to have to become proactive. You can't sit on your rear end like a lot of Americans do and watch it spread out year after year after year to the point now that whereas, you know, they have to actually make seating bigger for Americans because we're becoming more lazy and we're becoming more sorry and we're dying because we refuse to change our ways. So I'm full well know that the masses of the people, especially you people who ascribe to Christianity, you know, this man made a very important statement. He says, because if people believe it, did you hear what he said? He said, because if people believe it. And that is the power of influence behind deception. Because if they can get you to believe it, then you will live your life according to what you believe. That doesn't mean what you believe is the truth. That doesn't mean what you believe has the spirit of truth behind it. It's all predicated upon, it's all based upon if you believe it. Because if you believe it, you will function after that belief. If you believe it, you will act after that belief. If you believe, you will walk your life according to, and remember, because they were the first ones who planted all these thoughts in your head. And it's become ingrained into our minds the way that we think today. That the first thing we do, it's human nature, that when truth comes to us, the first thing we do is fight against it. And we oppose it with everything within our being. But if you have the spirit of truth, and he's convicting your heart, you will know the truth when you hear it. And not many people are going to hear that truth. See, the power of belief, the power of persuasion, it makes no difference whether it's true or not. It's just if you believe it. And most of us, we believe that these Federal Reserve notes is real money, because that's how the whole system functions. Isn't that something? They have actually jacked Fort Knox, taking all the gold from it and give us tungsten. And then many people out there are buying paper notes, paper contracts, paper notes, paper contracts, in order to, because they believe that they have gold in the safe somewhere, some distant thing. And they don't expect, because they control you, they dominate you, they manipulate you through propaganda, they manipulate you through using reverse psychology, they manipulate you because they are the very system that has taught you how to function and how to think. And most of you don't even know what freedom is, because you have never exercised it before in your life. You've always believed everything that first been in your mind, and you've been spending all these years defending what you believe is truth, and you will not do any research, you will not check anything out, and you will fight against those like me who bring forth the truth, because you refuse, because your mind tells you that because you believe it, it is true. And what you've done, the same thing I tell people all the time, you have defined God on your own terms and your own conditions. As a matter of fact, you have molded an image of the Most High after your own consciousness. Now, that doesn't mean that it's right. And most of us, the 99% of us, we're going to find out after death. You know, when we die, and then you really truly see that there's a place called hell for real, and you end up going there, that's when some of you are going to wake up and it's going to be too late. So my job is not to all you people out there who already know it all, who already got it all figured out. Now, I'm a pastor. I have the spirit of truth, and if you can hear me, you will know. Because the king said, my sheep, they hear my voice, and a stranger's voice they will not follow. So yeah, there's a spirit behind the words that I'm saying. And only those who have the spirit of truth will hear my words. And that's the truth, and that's the truth straightway. Check out this one.
Well, in America today, we are getting closer to fully exposing the greatest con and cover-up in the history of this country. It involves our banks, the Federal Reserve, our Congress, and, of course, you and me. First, though, think of the Fed as the godfather in this con.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. Now, just go outside, enjoy yourself.
The role of the godfather, played by former Fed Chief Alan Greenspan, who appeared before the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission this morning, denying that he ever knew what he helped perpetrate.
The notion that we in any way favored any of them or basically were influenced with respect to policy by what they said, other than the facts they gave us, which we always evaluated, I saw no evidence of that in my tenure.
And he may not have had favorite among the banks because Greenspan was working for all of the banks against you. The bankers, of course, the unrepentant con men being supported by the Federal Reserve.
She picked him clean. He never missed it. Remember that sting experience? How good you felt?
So good getting that money for free, getting away with it. Here's how the con went down. The bankers were operating under an implicit guarantee from the godfather, the Federal Reserve, in the form of guaranteed low interest rates, guaranteed cheap money exclusively for the con men. Then Chairman Greenspan, the godfather, would agree to hold those rates, let's say 2% for as far as the eye could see. The banks, or bankers, the con men, would borrow that money from the Federal Reserve, let's say 2%, and then turn around and lend it back to you at, let's say, 6%. That encouraged the patsies, you and me, to be drawn into the con because 6% looks like a pretty low rate. Low rates for houses, low rates for cars. Heck, you can join a health club, make that on payments, they'll turn that into bonds, and of course, promises of a higher than average return for those managing teachers and policemen's and judges' pension funds that are buying into the con as well. And here exactly is where the con comes in. As you and I both know, the banks had no money. They were getting it from the Federal Reserve, which is us. It's funny money. They had no capital to back up their lending. But that did not matter because they also had no risk in the lending. If the lending paid off, they win. And they won big when they did that because they did it with leverage. Top Manhattan executives alone paid themselves $121 billion in bonuses over the first part of the decade. Now, mind you, when the bank loans failed, they knew they were too big to fail. So the rest of us, you and me, would have to bail them out. The ignorant electorate, if you will, the patsies, who had no idea, and really still don't, understand how badly they are being conned by our government and our banks. Once the banks, however, realized there was no losing, the question was, how do we make the con bigger? How do we get more money through this crazy machine so we can get richer? The question, or the answer, I should say, is simple. Make more loans, more credit card loans. Think of all the credit card applications that were sent to you over the past 10 years. More car loans. It's the reason General Motors went upside down. It wasn't the cars. It was because they were running a financing scheme. Home loans, you know the narrative. So the people most hurt by this con, the home buyers, the cops, the teachers, pensioners who were suckered in by the bait of low credit, and high returns in exchange for buying worthless toxic assets manufactured by the bankers. That's why your pension fund was wiped out. That's why the interest rate on your savings to this day remains around zero. If you're a retiree, you know what I'm talking about. It's also why you're now drowning in a mortgage on a house that's worth far less than you owe, because the bankers were happy to lend you money they did not have to drive up the price of that house, because they knew the more loans the better, but no downside for them. So what's next? Higher taxes for us, higher interest rates for us, to pay for the bailouts, while our government that was theoretically elected by us refuses to recover the stolen money by the con men or fix the system that allows them to continue to perpetrate the con against you and me. The current financial reform legislation proposed by our government would give the Godfather, the Federal Reserve in this case, even more power to regulate the game. The con men, represented by the Wall Street bankers, of course, giving our Congress a cut of the action, $344 million so far lobbying against the bill, second only to health care. And we saw how well it worked out for special interest on health care. Home run. They got a guaranteed customer base with no reform. I'm sure the bankers will do pretty well as well. All this, of course, while assuring our lawmakers, many of whom do not even understand how the con works in the first place, that the financial crisis has been fixed, of course, with an infinite supply of your money. After all, just check out stocks over the past year. We are back over 10,000 on the Dow, thanks to that blank check from the Federal Reserve. So now, as we finally head towards Congress debating financial reform in our country, the question must be asked: does it make sense for our government to give more power to a Federal Reserve and banker con men who unrepentantly caused this crisis and make money at your expense on the pension side and on the credit side? That's the current plan. Give them more power. Joining us now, Congressman Alan Grayson, Democrat from Florida, who sponsored the audit the Fed bill with Ron Paul. Congressman, pleasure to see you again. And on the phone, Bill Fleckenstein, president of Fleckenstein Capital, and more importantly, author of Irrational Exuberance, The Greenspan Bubble. Bill does an exceptional job of explaining exactly how the Godfather, Alan Greenspan, allowed the banks to perpetrate this con. In fact, Bill profited rather handsomely betting against the con, knowing that it was a bubble. I know, Congressman Grayson, that you understand more or less everything that I just said and then some. And are likely more frustrated than I am at our Congress's unwillingness to actually acknowledge or understand the con or address it. Why do you think it has been so difficult and continues to be difficult for anybody in our Congress to really deal with this?
Well, I have the benefit of having worked as an economist for 4 years before I was elected to Congress, and that does give me some insight into how all this works. I think a lot of people on Capitol Hill simply don't understand how this works the way you just described it. Clearly, they should be listening to your show. If you don't understand that the bank's incentive is to lend as much money as possible without any repercussions, because the only way they make money is with lots of lending or gambling, effectively, and everybody else's incentive is to try not to get screwed, and yet the Congress is feeding the money to those who have a directly adverse incentive. They make money by screwing over pensioners and borrowers, and our Congress is making that more possible, not less possible. How did we find ourselves in this situation? Well, I think the fundamental problem is campaign finance reform. I'm not trying to change the subject here, but I do want to point out that we wouldn't have this problem except for the fact that lobbyists hand out $5,000 checks. Bill, explain in the simplest sense why it is Alan Greenspan is so directly responsible for creating this con.
Well, first of all, let me say, Dylan, yours was one of the most succinct explanations of the problem that I've heard, so that was quite a good send-up that you did. Because Greenspan is ultimately responsible because, A, he was the one who put rates at a level that was too low and then refused, in the face of all evidence, to do anything to try to retard the potential for an asset bubble. He was in denial about the equity bubble and then turned around and created the the credit/housing bubble, and to this day refuses to accept any responsibility for it. When prices are held at an artificially too low of level, by putting too much money in the system, that money seeks its way out into other places, and if you and it will end up creating a bubble. And the more leverage used in the bubble, the more dangerous it becomes. Greenspan not only made the interest rates too low, he advocated the policies and he cheerled for the housing bubble. For instance, he made a speech where he tried to explain why housing could not possibly be a bubble. So it was not just his conduct of monetary policy, it was the speeches he made, and he was held in such high regard, other people adopted his behavior and his philosophies.
Congressman Grayson, you mentioned campaign finance reform and the need to get the lobbyists out, because the bank lobbyists, $344 million, a cut of the action on the con goes to Congress. Are you as cynical as that would suggest, that basically Congress knows that they should create transparency and capital requirements, which would end the ability for there to be a con like this, but refuses to do so because they're afraid of losing those checks?
I think it's worse than that, actually. We lived through an economic disaster, and now we're slowly recovering from it. We lost 20% of our national wealth in 18 months, the last 18 months of the Bush administration, and housing topped out 3.5 years ago, not just in Florida, but around the country, and nobody has been held responsible, not Alan Greenspan, not anybody else. In Japan, they have a way different solution to these kinds of problems. It's called Harry-Carry.
I think what confuses people at this point, Congressman, and having been talking about this incessantly for a few years now, most people, if you look at the polling, understand at least enough of this to know that Congress works for the banks, not for the American people, and yet Congress still seems phenomenally willing to drag its feet in addressing this. Harry-Carry may be interesting or nice. We're probably not going to see it. We live in a democracy where we're told we elect people who look out for our interests, and yet the same people are creating laws that allow this group to con the American people out of the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the world with no consequences. Are you suggesting special interests have so much control that our government literally is willing to facilitate that level of wealth transfer with no consequences?
I think that's a fair statement, and I would add to what was said before that we've got the creation of the idea of too big to fail under Alan Greenspan. We've got him gunning the economy through the Y2K money supply increase that led to economic disaster within 4 months. He made mistake after mistake after mistake, and what we never hear from any of these people is, I'm sorry. We don't even hear that. And I think it's because the system is enslaved. Yes, that's right. And the Senate bill unfortunately does that. The Senate bill takes whatever possibility there is of somebody who's actually looking out for the consumer and puts that in, of all places, the Federal Reserve as the one responsible to do that. The Federal Reserve, which is actually run by big banks, it's governed by big banks. They choose the people who occupy the seats of power in each regional bank. And yet we're going to be giving them more power.
Go ahead, Bill.
Dylan, you know, if the American banking system, if the directors and higher-ups there were held personally liable for some of the problems, as they are in Brazil, for instance, and as they used to be in this country 70 years ago, then you might get a level of oversight on the banks and have them pursue policies that we would wind up finding less odoriferous. It's not that difficult. You just have to make the guys in charge personally liable for some of the problems, and some of this behavior would go away.
Any chance of that, Congressman?
Yes, in fact, we're working on a bill to do exactly that, and we've examined what happens in other countries when they make the kinds of mistakes we've seen the last few years in America. And it's not a pretty picture for the people in charge, either in Wall Street or in the Capitol.
Listen, Congressman, we appreciate your efforts on our behalf to correct for the con and get the money back and fix the system. And Bill, thank you for your journalism and your efforts to make sure people actually understand how this happened. Truly, Bill Fleckenstein, thank you.
You know, after all that, if you can't hear, sleep on. But if you can hear, start becoming proactive. I mean, you don't have as much time as you used to, but at least you have a little bit of time. Change your mind. Again, this is real. This is not. This is satanic to the core. You just heard the truth again, and you heard the truth straightway.